And Debbie, you are all set. Thank you again for doing this for us.
You are welcome. Well, good morning, everyone. I'll share the screen. And as we go through this, I'll share a few things about what you will want to do as well as things you won't want to do for presenting. So you will likely see this up, Mastering the Art of Presenting Virtually. And if not, you can let Erica know or let me know. But you may thought, well, this is all about speaking, or possibly about this that we're doing right now in a Zoom session. Note they are not calls, they are meetings or sessions or events. So we'll talk more about that. And you may have thought it was as simple as this, having a computer and sitting at a table and being ready for it. So we'll see. So who here is somewhat challenged with the virtual environment? Now we have a reactions opportunity, so raise your hand please, and those reactions are down in the lower part of your screen. You'll see reactions. You could applaud or raise your hand. All right, so Erica's showing me her hand there. I see a few of you are, or you can just raise your hand. So the whole time today, I'll be explaining what I'm doing, which some of you know I do about presentations. The other part of it is I want you to know what to do and not to do. That's the reason you're here. So I'll tell you the reasons, and you're welcome to ask anything, as most of you know. So some of you are, and some of you may not be. But I wonder if any of you have felt like this. The guy says, "What you doing, sweetie?" And she says, "Running a budget meeting remotely." And through the Zoom on the laptop, someone says, "Who's the guy in the towel?" Right? Well, Samantha was talking earlier, and some of us were sharing. Some of those Zoom bombs are not what you want, and they're not really about the person who did it. It reflects on you. So you might also feel like this about your remote work. The guy's stranded on the island. He says to the guy saving him, "Can you come back in a couple of days? I'm getting so much done without the distraction of the office." So wherever you are with this, please know that today's session is about mastering the art of presenting virtually, and nothing's really off limits for what we can talk about here. I know it's being recorded, so just know that. Our goal, though, for the time we have together, and we have about 30 minutes of the presentation, 20 to 30 minutes, and then it's wide open for you to ask anything. I'll come in and out, though, so that we can hit this goal to add to your toolbox for confidently presenting to one or many, any size audience on any virtual platform. We talked FaceTime's even a virtual platform, and WebX and Teams, so Zoom's not the only one. A little bit of perspective. Part of this comes from a book I wrote in about 2014, Presenting Powerfully, and the other is from the brand new book that just got finished, Remote Work Rockstar, and I'm so excited about it and to bring that to you today. So that's where all this comes from. As we look ahead, I'm going to set the stage and then cover communication approaches, take ownership of virtual relationships and give you tips on that, and present ideas in a virtual environment. So before we do that, I'm going to share with you something that's really smart to do. I'm stopping the share. People feel like when they're in a virtual presentation, they just have to be hunkered down and trapped in that Prezi or that PowerPoint. You don't, not at all. What you can do is do what I'm doing now and come back and make sure people are connected. You can use this time for questions. So again, I'll work these throughout. But we all good with the goal and the idea today? Yes, you didn't think you were in the How to Solve the Financial Crisis seminar, right? Okay, we're good. Thanks, Mark. I love the thumbs up. I'm going to go back into the share. The other reason I'm doing this is in case you accidentally do something in a Zoom meeting or WebEx or whatever they are, just like you would if you were in person, just correct it. So I don't want you to feel as though, I notice people are starting to feel even more nervous because they feel like they're in this box. And yet we're humans, none of us are perfect. So you could say, "Oh, oops, I did that. Let me correct it," instead of feeling that panic. So I'll come back to the share. What happens when you come back to the share is you're going to see your presentation twice. You may accidentally click on the original. If you do, just get back to the slide that you want to get to. So a few things that happen. So we'll set the stage then, and as we do on our agenda, I know you want to guarantee for this hour you're spending, we started, and I appreciate it because we started charging at the South Tampa Chamber. For the last couple of months, everything's been complimentary out of respect for everything that's going on. And now certainly we want to keep the chamber going. So we have a guarantee for you for this time. I do guarantee if you do absolutely nothing related to the Mastering the Art of Presenting Virtually session, then nothing will change as a result of being here. And that's 100% guaranteed. And some of you have heard me say that before. The reason I mention that guarantee is you can't guarantee what anybody's ever going to do in a meeting in person or a meeting virtually. So be really mindful of how you set the stage, because when you set something out there, you can have a goal, a plan. We can't guarantee what people are going to do. So how do we get them to engage is what we'll talk about. So first, some presenting misperceptions, and these are presenting overall. Few misperceptions that are out there. That you have to fake it till you make it. This is not about faking it till you make it. In virtual, guess what? Even more so, it's not. Because we can start to see so closely what's going on with someone. So definitely you want to be prepared. I call it make it till you make it. So make it about that topic, then make it to your next meeting. Some people think that the it factor is born and not made. And while it's true, some people just naturally tend to wow people with the way they speak. You can absolutely learn it, and that's what we're here to do today. Now, as long as you're being true to yourself, we're not good at becoming just like someone else. That can be the challenge. People think that is something really difficult to overcome. I will save you hours of concern about it and coaching sessions. You just have to close your mouth. I know it. You might go, what? Ums and ahs are because we hang our mouths open. We're hurried Americans, and we sit like this. And then as soon as we want to say something, our vocal cords kick in before our full word is formed. So just when you're not speaking, you can mute like Erica said, and then also close your mouth. It's amazing what'll happen. People think nerves are a bad thing. They're not. Nerves mean you care. I would rather have somebody nervous who I hear that little bit of nerves than to have somebody apathetic and they act as though it's not a big deal. And I'm going to talk about that too. People think the deck is the presentation. It's not. If anything happened right now, I could go on my phone and share all of this with you. The difference in a deck and you being the presentation is you. So you're still the energy. So you may notice that I have a lot of space around me. You don't see that I'm just like this. See my face? I've got this space around me so I can still do movement because people follow sound and motion. So it's not just the deck and you're just talking about it. So when you're presenting, you want to keep that in mind. You're still a huge part of it. People think presenting is no big deal, and I mentioned that earlier. If they say, oh, it's not a big deal, it's just Zoom, and I'm only on for 5 minutes, here's the catch. We're working remotely, or even if we're working partially remotely and part of the time in an office or with clients and customers, that's the lasting impression because we look at the visual. So presenting is a big deal, and I don't mean it in a way that's intimidating, but more of we want to respect that people spent time doing it. And the last misperception is people believe the more you present, the better you will be. I presented to a huge group of medical students, and I led with this one earlier or last year at the end of the year, and they thought it was just terribly mean. So I closed with it on this slide with all of you out of respect, because I get that it sounds really terrible. At the same time, you don't get better presenting the same way, you just get used to being mediocre. And what happens with that, and it's okay if you laugh or think, oh, that sounds harsh, we get comfortable with what we repeat. It doesn't mean we're better at it. So this is all about ensuring that you're being the best you as you present. And I'm certainly not attempting to have you present exactly as I do, but with your personality in the way that works. So those are our misperceptions as we set the stage. So here are some communication approaches, and Eric and I talked about working this in because it still transitions us into we're working remotely and we're presenting via Zoom and other formats. So here's a little bit of fun with communication approaches. Right now, you'll notice a lot of people are all over the place. They're not sure what they're doing. They're nervous about their business, and respecting that a lot of us haven't had a lot of income lately. I can see where people get tempted and they're all over the place with what they're offering, how they're communicating. They're not being very consistent. Then we have the overly persistent salesy person, like, I can do this, I can do this. And they're constantly emailing. Some of you have probably gotten out of a lot of emails lately because it was just too much. I mean, how many times can you order another pair of shoes or whatever it is because they're sending it every single day? I've had multiple conversations about a few stores where you think, I'm not going to order today because they're going to send me something tomorrow. And after a while, you're exhausted. So just be careful about that. Some people are being aloof. It's really only if something's needed for them. So they're not checking in on you, but instead, once they need something from you or want something from you, they are. And some are being consistent with care. So having a little bit of fun. Some people are all over the place. I call these the bull in a china shop. They're like, we can do everything virtually and we'll figure it out. And now we sell something new. So you don't want to be perceived like that. And it will come through in all of your communication. The overly persistent and salesy is a snake, right? We don't want to feel like that's a little bit slimy and people are really getting too much about the sales and not about the relationship. The aloof are only if something's needed. I hope nobody's offended, but this reminds me of a cat. Because a lot of times, cats are like, I'm okay until they're hungry, or I'm okay until they want to come out and see you. I even put the cat looking a little bit away. We want to strive for that consistent with care, which I'm surprised. I'm sure some of you aren't surprised I picked a dog, but this little golden retriever. And I'm not saying that we're animals in this world. I am saying that our communication approaches are something that, regardless of whatever happens with how long we're working remotely, is we want to make sure that we are consistent with care. So we're being consistent in our message, we're being consistent in our outreach, and that we care about people and not just the sale. So a little bit of fun there. I'm going to stop the screen or stop the share and see how we're doing. We're doing okay? Anybody have any questions you want me to address right away about those misperceptions or about the communication styles? I love the thumbs up. I even got applause from Skip, so he's my favorite, of course. All right, so we're good. I'll come back in again, just showing you that it's really nice to check in, let people engage. In case I wasn't clear, I would rather clarify it before moving forward. So those are our communication approaches. Sometimes if you come back into a screen, in particular in Zoom, you won't be able to advance your slides right away. People can't see it, but I have my mouse. You want to keep your mouse off to the side, not up here, so that you're not leaning in. You have it to the side. All you do is click the mouse once and then advance the slide. So now, taking ownerships of these virtual relationships, how do we do that? If we own our virtual relationships, it enhances the way we can present. So ask people their preferred way of communication. Do they prefer text? Do they still prefer emails, phone calls? Would they like to have video sessions? And what time would they like their meetings? We often only think about what we want. We say, oh, it's not a good day, so I'll just call them instead of doing a video. Well, if they prefer it, put your client or your customer first, because in that relationship, we're serving the relationship. We're not necessarily doing everything to coddle them. We're serving the relationship. So honor the style and the time. So if we ask it and somebody says, I prefer to meet at 7 p.m., don't go, oh, I don't meet at night. So if you do have limitations that you want to put in as boundaries, then ask someone, would you prefer to meet in the morning, the afternoon, or the early evening? And then accept whatever they choose. Take the lead on scheduling and hosting. Set things up. They're inexpensive to be able to host. And when you can schedule and host, you're getting into the system is fast. And it's also, you have all the controls of muting and doing different things. So it's part of that relationship building. Be positive, be consistent, and be open. And you're going to say, wow, Deb, you've already said this word consistent so many times. But that positive approach, not meaning we're phony, but that we're positive. We call it optimism and emotional intelligence, that we believe that we can move forward with a solution. So if we're open to other people's ideas, our relationships are likely going to be more about sharing. So let's say you have somebody right now who is unfortunately not in a good position financially. If you do all of these things about owning the relationship, they'll likely be open with you and attempt to still come to your meetings and have the presentations and not feel strange about the relationship. So no gossip and no negativity. And appreciating it can be tempting because of these funny things that happen. Let's keep the names out of it and have a laugh, but not at someone's expense. So that's a bit on owning the virtual relationships. Here are a few more. Consider a video greeting. And I was sharing this with a group on Tuesday, and a video greeting is something that a lot of you may have seen me do, where you take a minute to 3 minutes, and shorter is usually best, and you pose a question. For example, I was working with a physician, and I said, you're probably tempted to say, hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and our hours are this. That's not what we want to hear or see in our email. What's great to see is somebody saying, are you feeling like you want to have a partner in your health? Are you wondering what your symptoms are, but you don't want to go to the hospital? Well, that's the reason we're here. So in other words, you want to pose a question, answer it, and then give your contact information. Most organizations and individuals I haven't seen do this, that if you send out a video greeting, sure, not everyone will watch it. Those who watch it love to see you and see a little bit around what's going on with you. So that's a really nice way to combine the idea of presenting and the relationship. Send personal notes. I'd gotten one from Star, I'd gotten one from Erica. I was thanking them, and it's a wonderful way to stay connected. Listen for cues and clues to people's favorites, like their favorite restaurants, their favorite activities. So instead of saying, what do you miss? Ask them, what are they looking forward to? And if you want to send them something, you'll send them something that they really appreciate. Offer to record any of your sessions like we're doing today, or send out the recording to them, or even a recap. I was working with Vistage the other day, and I said, I don't normally do this. I'll send the copy of the video and a recap, just because they didn't really have that opportunity to engage as much. So you may want to do some extras. Smile, right? We can hear what you see. So it's really sounds silly. It's important, though, that when you're presenting, that you're smiling. You're not just checking the box to get through it. So before we move to present ideas in a virtual environment, I'll come back again, see how we're doing. All okay? Anybody want me to address something in particular? Ed just snuck right back in his seat. I love it. I'm happy to answer anything about those relationships, even if it's sales or it doesn't necessarily seem like it's the topic, because whatever's on your mind is most important. Okay. Notice what I did. I didn't say hold your questions to the end. I also didn't say it had to be about this. That's part of showing a confidence when you're presenting in a virtual environment, and I encourage you to do that as well. So I see nice thumbs up, and we'll hop back in and we'll get to the heart of it. So as we come to presenting ideas in a virtual environment, let's get right there. There are 4 keys to presenting prowess, whether you're one-on-one, in a group, virtual, or live, or a combination of both. Because since we can have some people in small groups now, that's what you may start seeing is this combination of you're presenting in front of a few and others are streaming or watching or participating. So keep these 4 things in mind no matter what. Be an expert on your topic, absolutely. If you feel like you're not the expert, then get with the person who is and minimally rehearse and practice. You want to be well-versed, not so rehearsed that you memorize it though. Put the audience first. When the audience, and hopefully you guys are feeling this, when the audience knows that you're there for them and that you thought about what do they deserve to have, what would they like to hear today, what's on their minds, you notice it's less of me saying, I want to tell you, and it's more about you may want to do this. So put the audience first, which goes hand in glove with the next one. Get out of your own way. If you're not having the best day, or your laptop isn't cooperating really well, or you happen to have a dog that barks in the background, life's not perfect. Just let it be about the audience and not about you. And then come from a place of gratitude. I hear so many people say, oh, I have to get on this Zoom. And they say call. They're not calls. I mentioned that earlier. I'm going to keep saying it. They're Zoom meetings or Zoom events. And they say, oh, I have to. Oh, I have to present this. I have to talk to my clients now. Wow. How about I get to? Because if you really feel like you're grateful that no matter what's going on in this world, that you have this opportunity, your positioning is going to be from that gratitude, and it's going to be sincere. So those are 4 keys no matter what. Now, this virtual presentation mindset approach, this shifts us now more into the remote work rockstar book. And there are a lot that I have here for you. So hopefully you enjoy them. And if I've missed any you want me to talk about, jump right in. Remember, you've been working virtually for your entire life, because email, phone, text, and video, they're all virtual. You've been doing it and you've been succeeding at it. We happen to have taken away that larger group presentation. The reality is most of what you've done in your success has been through a virtual format. So you're already good at it. Limit your distractions. I can't tell you the number of times that people forget to shut down their email and other things on their computer when they're presenting, and the phone, different things. Just be present. And when you limit your distractions, people sense that your mindset is about what you're working on. Don't multitask. It's been proven it doesn't work. It's called switch tasking. And if you think you're going to be over here doing something, it's okay. You're cheating yourself, though. You're not cheating anybody else, but especially if you're presenting and you're attempting to do something else, it's wonderful to have somebody who can let people into the meeting, or like we do here at the chamber, give 10 minutes so that as people come in later and they know that they can get in on it. So you don't really want to be multitasking if there are people involved. This is in life in general, especially if you're presenting virtually. Think less I, me, my, more you, yours, ours. What I mean by that is fewer times are you saying, I want to tell you, my biggest thing is, all these expressions people use in presentations, whether they're virtual or not. And think about you. Hopefully you've heard this already. When I say you may want to consider our approach at the chamber, instead of my saying, well, I wanted it this way, it's about what Eric and I talked about you at the audience. So just think about how this approach is part of your mindset and it carries through in your presentations. Take ownership of responsibilities. So when you're presenting, be willing to take on all of those things I mentioned earlier, such as recording and other aspects of it, and even the part afterwards, so that then it keeps you in touch and keeps you in control of how the message is conveyed. Lead and guide versus direct. You notice I'm not going to say to people, don't ever do that. I'll say, oh, okay, you may want to do it this way. So if you see people on doing things, you could lead and guide them even as you're presenting, to assist them having a good experience with what you're possibly selling or promoting or conveying to them. Then consider a theme for what your presentation is, or even deliver food to them. You could deliver gift cards, you can send food so that you're all having the same food. So if you were to do a lunch and learn, you could have everybody eating similar food. And it's a really great touch if you want to have fun with your visual presentation and your virtual presentation. It's a great touch to just do that added oomph that you would have had them in person anyway. So there are 6 parts to presenting powerfully. A lot of you have heard these. They haven't changed when you're in the virtual environment. They are an open, a preview, an interaction portion, the body, summary, and close. I'll go through each of these. So the open is not, hi, I'm Debbie, and I'm speaking on presenting in a virtual world. What it was, who here is uncomfortable still in a virtual world? And you guys raised your hand. So an open is connecting to the audience. could be a question, could be a fact, could be a funny cartoon. You notice I had a few of them today because it was good to have extra examples since we're talking about virtual presentations. So that's the open. You don't introduce yourself until a preview. And typically somebody could have introduced you. In a preview is where you talk about the topic, the goal, and you notice again, the goal is not I want to share with you or I'm going to cover. It's instead, the goal is that you will have X. And you may remember our goal today is for you to have more tools in your toolbox for presenting to one or many. This is also where you introduce the agenda. Agendas are to be 2 to 4 topics. You could be talking for 10 minutes or 10 hours, and it's still 2 to 4 topics. This way we feel like we can process through that in the amount of time. Speaking of time, in the preview is where you want to mention how much time is dedicated and that you're the one who's responsible for it. Now, interaction, that's everything from smiling, eye contact, and yes, eye contact in a presentation like this is having the presentation and the laptop at eye level. You notice I'm not down here and I'm not way up here looking down. I've seen up people's noses and down people's heads enough for the last few weeks. So interaction is all about people feeling like you're approachable. So the 10 minutes we have at the beginning, it's a wonderful thing to do. And you don't want to ask people questions by calling them out. So that's not the interaction. We might say, who here is interested? But I wouldn't say, Erica, tell me the answer. Because you don't want to put the audience on the spot. The interaction is to be positive. Now, the body is where you share your expertise. Remember, you're an expert on what you're talking about. So the body brings in all of that expertise and you cover the points of the agenda so that you're staying on track and you're keeping the audience aware of where you're going. There's a summary. So you come back and you check in. Did you get the goal? Did you hit the goal? And this is where you review the agenda, you review the goal, and yes, this is where you answer questions. I don't know how this happened, but almost all of us, if we were taught anything about presenting, we were taught to close the presentation, say that's it, and then answer questions. We don't want to do that because you want to control that lasting impression, especially in a virtual environment, because you want that last thought to be of you smiling and thanking them, not attempting to ask a question that you weren't necessarily prepared for. And the last is the close, and that ties you back to the open. So this is really just bringing it full circle. These don't change. You can use this in a meeting on the phone. You can use this in an email. Think about an open, what you want to talk about. You're connecting with them. And importantly, you can do it face-to-face or virtually. Now, I'm going to give you some math. If you have these 6 presentation parts, you really only are looking for 4. We remember things in 3s and 4s. Americans do. It's the cadence to the way we think. So that's the reason 3s, 4s, 7s, or 10s are good. So you think 6 isn't in there. Well, there are 4 presentation parts. If you have the open, you have the close. So that's 1. So you know that I asked the first thing today about who is still a little uncomfortable in the virtual environment. That's going to come back at the end. I'm giving it away. If you have the preview and the summary, that's the second one, because you preview going in and then you summarize at the end. So you're just flipping them. The body is the third one and the interaction is the fourth. So you really are looking at 4 things in your virtual presentations. A little bit more on this, presenting ideas in a virtual environment. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to stop the share and see if I can answer anything about those 6 parts. How are they sounding? Is there anything you'd like clarity on? We're okay? All right, so got a good thumbs up.
Debbie, this is Steve. Is there an opportunity to maybe reach out to the audience and have them help summarize maybe what they've learned, just to kind of be—
Yes, as a matter of fact, you could stop, thanks Steve, you could stop at each point and say who's willing to share one thing that you liked about that, one thing that you will incorporate, And you're going to see, like Steve and I planned this, at the end, I'm going to ask you all what was most impactful and what will you do differently. So you could stop at each section. So for American Lung Association, if you were sharing about COVID-19 and the importance of health and then fundraising, you might stop after the health portion and ask if anybody had concerned about their lung health. And then you might move on to talk about prevention and then see if there were any questions. And then if you had a fundraising ask, you would ask that toward the end. So I hope I addressed that. Sound good? He's nodding. He's been smart and muted. Thanks for the thumbs up. Okay. All right. So let's go in and wrap up what we have for this. So presenting ideas in virtual environments. Think about this is a presentation, not just a meeting. So if you get the opportunity to present, I encourage you to think that, okay, I'm presenting. So you might be in the meeting for an hour. And if you have a minute or 50 minutes of it, think I'm presenting. So how would you present yourself? You would be dressed for it. You would be ready for it. Act as though you are going to be in front of those people regardless. And you just happen to now switch it to via the laptop. So you really don't want to change much about that. Establish and share a goal. So even if you don't use PowerPoint, which absolutely you don't have to use PowerPoint or Prezi, they're not for you though, they're for the audience to have somebody else, or excuse me, something else to look at. Make sure you share a goal. Even if you're in a one-on-one meeting and you're on one of these platforms, you could say, so we're meeting for our 15-minute one-on-one. The goal is that we take a look at what's gone well this week and what we're going to change. Even saying the word purpose or goal makes people feel as though you've really thought about it and that there's organization to your presentation. Use the agenda, 2 to 4 items, as I mentioned, and build your slides is huge. It's important in person, and especially in a virtual environment. If I put up everything on the slide and started talking from the top down, you would have read it and started doing something else because it's not the best use. If you build them by using what's called animation and a peer, and I'm happy to share that with anybody, you keep people tracking along with you and it keeps people's attention. In a virtual environment, we're not able to pull from people's energy like we usually are. So by building the slides and coming in and out, we get a sense of that engagement, and that's somewhat like what Steve was asking, how do we connect them during it? Share your screen as I've done versus sending a deck. I've seen people do that. Had it happen with a client. As a matter of fact, yesterday afternoon, they're like, well, he sent you the deck. I said, will you please bring it up on the screen? And she said, well, you have it, don't you? I said, but then I'm looking down. I'm not looking at her. So it was good to share the screen. So think about what that does for your relationship if you can share the screen. Bounce back in for that engagement as we've done. And you can ask questions like Steve asked about, and just make sure you listen though, because sometimes people ask a question and they're in a hurry. Your audience doesn't know where you're going. So if you ask a question, you want to give people a chance to engage and think about it. If you get no responses to your question, ask it 3 ways. And if after 3 times nobody responds, it's not them, it's you. So then you want to move forward. But you don't want to just ask the question and keep badgering people because it might not be clicking with them. My joke is, we're Americans when we go to other countries and we don't speak the language. Sometimes we just speak slower and louder as though they're going to understand them. They're going to understand us. But questions don't work that way, and neither does it work that way in other countries. And then set up your next steps. So for this virtual environment, for any presentation, set up who's doing what next while you're in that meeting so that it's clear. And most of all, manage the time. You don't want to ever go, oh my gosh, it's 1:45. Oh, I have 27 more slides. I'm just going to have to go really fast, because that makes the person feel like you didn't prepare and that they're getting cheated. So the reason I put time over all of this is if you don't manage your time well, the rest of it gets lost because people feel hurried at the end. So as we look back, we set the stage, we covered communication approaches, take ownership of virtual relationships, and present ideas in a virtual environment. So did we do okay with this? Add to the toolbox for confidently presenting to an audience of 1 or more? Sound okay? I'm seeing head nods and thumbs. Good. Okay. So I'm back to Steve's question. So I'll point, what was most impactful and what will you do differently now? So who's willing to share what you like, what you're going to tweak or change? Who's got something?
Well, Debbie, this is Steve. I like the idea that you're not going to perfect the content per se. You're just going to be more familiar with it. So don't feel like you're, after third or fourth try trying to get the point across, you're not, an expert at it, that you do forget some things. So just, be easy on yourself.
Right. I mean, we're not going to be perfect. Skip and I work a lot together, as a lot of you know, and sometimes I'll ask a question, he'll ask the question, I'll ask a question, and pretty soon we just answer because we realize it's not the audience's fault if we're not connecting with them right then. So you don't want to say, oh, I guess you guys don't know, here's the answer. You just want to roll through it and then figure out how you reconnect. Yeah, it's so true. If people would realize that we know you're a human being, then it's okay. Thanks, Steve. Go ahead, Rebecca. You're muted.
I'm muted on my headset. I unmuted myself on the screen. We did a WebEx earlier.
Good.
Yeah. Whenever you are presenting, are you looking at yourself as the speaker? Are you looking at the camera, or are you focusing on who is talking at that time?
You're looking at the camera.
Okay.
So thanks for bringing that up. We don't want this.
Right.
I've seen so many people fix their hair, do it all before you get on there. And you notice I'm looking, and if you look in your screen and you have me on speaker, it probably looks like I'm looking right at you.
Right, because you're looking at the camera.
I'm looking at the camera. And that's a funny thing you mentioned it. I was sharing that with Michael the other day. I said, some of the newscasters, you can tell they're looking at the person on the screen and asking them the question, but you really do want to get used to looking up. And if you're challenged by it, then put sticky notes up there above it with some of your points, which will be a good reminder.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll answer that. You're welcome. Thanks.
Hey, Debbie, one of the things I've run into a little more recently, and I think it might be cases of cabin fever or just the overall, and I know we've talked about this before, sort of the pessimistic or negative view. When you're in your meetings and you are presenting something and you're consistently getting negative feedback from maybe one or two individuals, what are some things that we might be able to do to sort of flip that around, or do we just sort of move on from it and let it go versus trying to fix it in the moment?
Okay, Ed, so with Troy University, I know you guys had like a huge big virtual opportunity and one of the biggest you've ever had, and I can imagine somebody didn't like it. So even though you had huge success, so this is for all of us, because it happens to me too. Somebody's like, I didn't like this. And so think about saying to the person, you may be right. There may have been a better way to do it. And so number one, people who are pessimistic often sadly want to be heard. And if we remember that with some empathy and we let them know that we heard them, that's often is what they're looking for. We don't necessarily realize that somebody's not listening to them or they think we're not. Secondly, if they keep doing it, then a wonderful thing to do is to say, you know what? So after you've said you may be right and you listen, I do this a lot. You know what? How about we change places for a minute? So if you were me and I were you, what would you do in my role to have made it different so that I can learn for the next time? And let them come up with the solution, because what you want to do is get them off of the problem mindset and get them into the solution mindset.
Excellent.
And if all else fails, you mute them.
That's the move on portion. Okay, got it.
So I was on with someone and I wasn't the presenter, and we were both on, and I sent this person a text and said, you may or may not realize how pessimistic you're sounding, and while I believe you want to get to a solution, you may want to phrase it differently. Like, I just sent that person a text because I was thinking, oh my gosh, they just sound like they're griping. Right. And so I think hear them, check in with you, maybe right, and then ask them for like what's one solid solution, and if they still don't, then ask them to change roles with you, and then say, in the interest of time, may I schedule something with you for 10 or 15 minutes after this? Please don't say let's take it offline, but please call it a meeting.
Okay.
I hope I answered that one.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'll click back in. We have just a little bit more. I think we've answered a lot of the questions, but I encourage you to think about something differently. If there's anything else you wish you heard, certainly we can talk about anything else now. So if you were holding back or you just thought of something because of something Ed and I said, feel free to jump on in.
I have another question.
Okay.
So is it for you as the presenter, maybe it's attendee etiquette. Is it better if when you're presenting, you're looking at the camera or you're looking at your information? Do you find it distracting for attendees to be doing other things? Do you prefer them to change to no video at that time? Or is it like really dependent on the person's bandwidth? Like if they have, good internet, stay live. What's the proper thing to do, like for the connecting portion with your audience?
Yes. So if people really, you're right, Rebecca, it's a lot about the audience etiquette. So what's nice for a presenter is to see people. What's not great for a presenter is to see people doing this.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people, and I know I'm confident about it, is to say, you're welcome to stay. You decided to spend this time. Like I said earlier, hey, thanks for spending the time. And if you're going to stay engaged, which I hope you will, is keep your video on so that we can interact. Now, it is good etiquette, though, if it's going to be very long presentation. So mine was fairly long, to click off of that and put up the name, because you may want to get up and stretch, or you may want to do something. So it might sound like a very vague answer. The point is, if it's short, you want to stay on. So if you know somebody's going to talk for 10 minutes, you're likely going to stay like this. But it's better to block your picture if you think there's going to be something distracting.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Debbie, for an example, when I got up to get my coffee and you noticed that I had skipped out.
Oh yeah, I know you well.
Right. I mean, I'm only on my third one, so it got one more to go. Do I stop video, walk away, do what I need to do, and then start video when I come back? Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yes. And that brings me to drinks. This is not vodka, by the way, but so what's good to do is I drink out of this gigantic Yeti that some of you know. And if I'm presenting, I don't use that. I use a smaller glass, because it's okay if you want to take a drink. You're a human being. People are like, oh, I was parched and I couldn't drink for an hour. Yeah, you can. But if I put my gigantic one, it's like practically 2 hands. So you may want to think about something just a little less, and you can take a drink and put it back. And if you're presenting, you would take a drink if you were in front of people. So yeah, if you're in the audience, what happens in an audience is if you get up and there's movement, it's as though you got up and said, I'm going to go get my coffee. In a regular meeting, you'd be like, well, nobody would do that. But because we have the visual, we see it and we think, what's he doing? So if you block it, we might think that for a second, but then we're not looking and seeing you move when you come back. That's the etiquette of it. Hey, Bets.
Hey, what are your feelings on virtual backgrounds?
Okay, so virtual backgrounds, while they can be nice, are best to be related to something business focused or your company logo. The reason you can use them is if you don't like your background, or if it's messy, then you could use that. They take up less bandwidth, which is nice. The reason you may not want to use a virtual background is I don't use them because I move a lot. Now, when you are on video, you want to move more side to side than forward and back, because look how big my hands look. So if you have a virtual background, it'll eat my arm. So all of a sudden I'm doing this and my arm's gone. So if you're a participant, it's nice to have a virtual background. The challenge is Michael Dervich has got somebody like singing and dancing behind him and doing cartwheels now. So I'm looking at that. So you could do that for the start, for the social part, and then just change it. So I hope I answered that. Yeah. But like you could do Hapner Law. If you did a logo, I have them for mine. That's nice, especially at the beginning, because people go, oh, that's cool. It's as though you have one of those like roll up signs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And good thing I put that in the book.
Yep.
All right. So last part, you know where we're going with this. You can stay in touch certainly any which way you'd like on LinkedIn, Twitter, my email. I think you all know where I am on Instagram at Debbie Lundberg, and the Business of Life Masterclass, which is one of the podcasts I'm on and co-host, or Facebook, Presenting Powerfully. I do a lot of videos on there because you want to know that people are working remotely, not that people think you're not even remotely working. So I really appreciate it. So who here is ready to present well in the virtual environment? Can we get some hands up or thumbs up, or everybody good? All right, nice. Okay, well, good. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the art of mastering the art of presenting virtually. And I know we still have a little bit of time. It's pretty close on that. So thank you all.
Thank you, Debbie.
You are welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Debbie.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Debbie.
And I mentioned we're going to send, I'll send to everybody the link if you do. I'm not trying to sell you the book, but we, Eric and I talked about at the beginning that if people came on with this one, I'll send you the special rate for it after I have everybody's email.
That would be great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Looking forward to it.
You're welcome,
Take
everybody.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Debbie. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Debbie. Really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Thanks, David.
Good advice for job seekers too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's the way of interviews. It's a presentation.
Yeah. No, I mean, I went from the job I was telling you about before, went from the job recruiter directly to the company president on Friday, and he said you need to be in front of a video.